All right, now it's on. Okay. I feel this is in the wrong spot. All right. Welcome to the 2023 Winter Congregational Meeting. Thank you to those here in person and online for joining us in this important work of our church. I'm Kim Zeman, current president of the Board of Trustees. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm honored to serve with Vice President Melody Vaccaro and 7 other dedicated church member trustees. Could I have those board members who are currently here come forward? Thank you. Okay. I am honored to serve with all these trustees, with past President Judy Hart, our treasurers, our program council leader, Marcia Cedardahl. Those who are able to be with us this morning have joined me at the front of the room. Will everyone else who has ever served on the Board of Trustees or served as treasurer, and all those who are currently serving on the program council, stand up as you are able or raise your hand? Thank you so much to all of you for giving your time to serve as leaders of our church. Our liberal faith congregation depends on the dedication of church members like you. You may all sit back down. Now we are going to center ourselves and bring our focus to our work today with opening words offered by our Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair, while Melody Vaccaro lights our chalice. Then Julie Enerson will lead us in a song.
We have actually left our chalice burning from the meeting because the somewhat distracted minister failed to extinguish it. But for opening words, this is a reflection by Layla Ibrahim. I have been going to the same church for a very long time. For nearly 30 years, most Sundays, I've walked through our beautiful redwood doors. In all those years, I've filled a variety of leadership positions, from owl teacher to board president, usher coordinator to stewardship co-chair. And in all those years, my congregation has had ample opportunity to disappoint me. I am disappointed when people don't think my justice project is the one we should collectively work on. I'm disappointed when people want different music than I do. I am disappointed that we don't all agree that our children's ministry is the most important priority in our church. I'm disappointed that people don't give enough time, talent, or treasure to the church as I do. I'm disappointed, well, you get the idea. In nearly 30 years of relationship, there have been a lot of disappointments. 2 or 3 times over the years, I've been so disappointed that I seriously questioned remaining in my congregation. I have wondered if church is actually real. I have doubted its ability to provide the salvation of which we speak, lived beloved community. On those occasions, I have thought something that I will not repeat out loud in this meeting. I can just stop going to church for a while, or forever. But staying away has never helped me through such times. Rather, coming in closer, telling people about my spiritual crisis, listening, sharing, caring, and worshiping, have helped me to know that this is where I belong, even when church is the source of my frustration and disappointment. Because we are not a church to be with people who want to sing the same music, or rally for the same cause, or attend the same retreats. We are in church to learn to love better. And learning to love better can only happen when we love past our disappointments and return to a place of acceptance and affirmation. This is true in our personal lives, in our work lives, and in our church lives. It is a deep spiritual practice. At my best, as a religious person, as a Unitarian Universalist, as a member of this First Unitarian Church of Oakland, I am called to love everyone who walks through these doors. I don't need to like everyone. Not everyone is who I would choose as a friend. Not everyone agrees about what we are here to do. But if I am living to my best values, I offer care and respect and commitment to each member, friend, and guest in my beloved community. In the end, we can all try our best to live out our faith as Unitarian Universalists through study, conversation, service, and commitment. We forgive ourselves and we forgive others as we stumble through. We disagree, we annoy, we flake out on each other. And we worship, we support, we hold, and we affirm one another. There's only one choice, really, between imperfect community and no community. Again and again, we are all called to choose to commit ourselves to building a more just, more diverse, and yet ever messy and imperfect beloved community. May we be about that work.
So I'll sing the whole thing so you know where we're going, and then we'll do a little echo. We are here, here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. We are here, here together, in this holy moment, in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. Hope you like low notes, because that's where we're going with it. So let's do a little longer phrases. So I'll sing when you sing back. We are here, here together. In this holy moment, in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place. We'll just sing the whole thing. Here we go. We are here. We are here, here together in this holy moment, in this holy moment. And we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this. One more time. We are here. We are here together in this holy moment, and we're grateful for the winding road that brought us to this place.
Thank you so much, Julie. At our meeting today, we will hear reports and have a chance to ask questions. Our covenant of right relations guides us as we gather here today. The beginning of our covenant of right relations states, within and beyond the walls of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, we honor the principles and sources of Unitarian Universalism. We covenant to treat one another as we would wish to be treated, with respect, regard for healthy boundaries, accountability, open-mindedness, and equanimity, freely offering our tangible and sustained stewardship and engagement to realize our vision and mission. We strive to be guided in our thoughts, words, and actions by these attributes and the supporting statements of intent upon which we have mutually agreed. In the day-to-day practice, we covenant to begin our interactions with an assumption of best intentions, to truly listen to one another rather than awaiting our turn to talk, to assure that what is true for each of us is heard and considered, and to share only our own stories, honoring the privacy of others. These are our aspirations. As we interact in our community today, please keep this covenant in mind. Allison Starr will now share some information about our voting procedures for this meeting.
Hello, my name is Allison Starr. My pronouns are she, they, ella. After this winter congregational meeting, we will be voting on 4 items. We will vote on whether to approve the spring 2023 congregational meeting minutes, including any edits made at the town hall meetings and this meeting. We will be electing 2 people to serve on the nominations committee. We are also voting on the 2024 budget and the bylaws revision. The revision of our bylaws requires a 2/3 vote to approve. The other ballot items need a majority vote. We do need a quorum. Our bylaws state that 20% of the membership will constitute a quorum. This will be counted by the number of votes received. Because of our multi-platform format, not everyone will be in the sanctuary. To give everyone a voice, we will be voting online again, as we have done for the past several congregational meetings. Immediately following the congregational meeting, all members will receive an email from the church office with a link to the Google Form ballot. It is also linked on the governance page of our website. There will be instructions on the Google Form ballot on how to vote. Please follow those instructions closely. Once you are done with your voting, you will click the Submit button, and it will go to the church office for counting. For those who do not have electronic means of voting or who do not wish to vote online, we do have the option of a paper ballot. You will have 48 hours after the email to complete your voting. In order to be counted, your virtual or paper ballot must be received by the church office by Tuesday, December 12th at 11:30 a.m. Results will go out in the Friday e-blast on December 15th. Are there any questions about voting? Oh, 2 questions.
How many members do we currently have?
We reported approximately 250 something to the UUA in January.
I don't understand how a quorum is determined. If 50 people vote, what's the quorum? Or I don't understand the arithmetic of this.
So this is a reality of our hybrid life right now. We have 19 people watching on YouTube. We don't know if they're members or not because it's YouTube. So the way we've been counting quorums since spring of 2020 has been taking the total number of votes that we receive, and if that is above the number that we need for a quorum, then we have said that that counts as a quorum. So if we receive, to your question, Mary, we reported about 250 members to the UUA. We need 20% of our membership for a quorum. So if we receive more than 50 votes, we will consider that a quorum.
Everybody good now? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Allison. Now, Elle Stratman is here to tell us about the nominations committee and the candidates on whom we will be voting.
Thank you, Kim. So the nominations committee is a committee that is really actually quite important. A lot of people don't know exactly what we do. However, these are elected individuals who help find candidates not only for the nominations committee, but also for the board of trustees, the program council chair, and we also assist with recruitment of candidates for other groups within the church that ask us to do so. So you will be voting in this next 48 hours on 2 new nominations committee members. These are people that are going to represent you in finding good candidates for the board and for program council. The candidates, you should all have heard their names by now. In no particular order are Shelley Fowler, Joanne Lanning, and Diane Richards. You will vote for 2 of those on your voting sheet. Are there any questions? Seeing none, I will pass it back over to Kim.
Thank you so much, Elle. Another item we will vote on is the approval of the minutes from the spring 2023 congregational meeting as edited by Board Secretary Meg Marion from suggestions made at the town halls and today.
You'll find the minutes on the page following the nominations. Are there any suggestions for change? That will be voted on online, but thank you, Harry. And okay. Hearing no suggestions, I'll turn things over to Kim.
Thank you, Meg. And thanks to all of you who helped to edit this important document for our church governance and for our history. Duncan Case will now share information about the Lincoln Unitarian Foundation Committee. Duncan? Would you like, we can bring a mic. No. Okay.
Okay, like to hear. Okay. I have served formerly as treasurer for the church, less than 10 years ago. Now it's important for my presentation to realize that I'm not the treasurer of the church. There's an important distinction between the LUF funds and the operating budget of the church, which is one of the things I want to. Thank you.
Just like a nice intro.
All right, this work? But this is not. Okay. This seems so unnatural. Okay, so one of my missions here is to explain to you the difference between how the funds work out of LUF and how the funds work and come from for the church budget. Now, if you will accept my back for a moment. These are the major points that, like this. Okay. So one of the first mission of the LUF is to acquire and manage financial assets for the church. And this is done in terms of looking at books out of the office, that there is a separate fund that belongs to LUF, for which there's a spreadsheet that keeps track. As of November 1, the assets totaled $401,000 and 181. Period. So now, with those funds, LUF is responsible for investing the assets so as to maintain and optimize their value. Vanguard is the company we work with for investment, and there's 2 funds within there that we have our money placed. Now, the primary use of these funds is not to support the church budget per se, year to year, but rather those funds are used for significant repair, improvement, or construction of church property. There's some additional aspects that are included. But for example, this year, Luff paid for the repair of what's called the air source heat pumps, a total cost of $48,525.
Duncan, could I clarify that last one, please?
Sure.
It was actually a replacement of our old 30-plus-year-old gas HVAC system for the sanctuary and the gallery with a new air source heat pump system. So we got rid of that gas furnace, and we have an air source heat pump for the gallery and the sanctuary. So thank you.
Okay. So this was not placed in the budget for the church. It was a priority for the church to take care of this. But we have certain portions of the property which have decayed over time and need replacement or improvement. The roof was one, a while back. Okay, if we can go to the next slide. Okay, now, this is kind of an important understanding is that Luff, in its disbursement and acquisition of funds, works closely with the board. So it's a joint collaborative activity. So both Luff and the trustees work together, both vote on all disbursement requests, and in this case, for the replaced heating system, the trustees and the Luff committee each approved the $48,000 that went toward the replacement. Now, within Luff, the funds are divided into what's called restricted and unrestricted. Basically, it's funds that have a specific purpose for funding activities within the church, separate again from the budget. So one of the more significant ones is the Cole Music Fund, which is used to purchase equipment and materials for, here you see it down the fourth item down here. We also have the Dyer Fund, which will be closed out at the end of the year, but it's contributed to a number of projects within the church. The Sorensen is one of the more significant standing items that we have, which you probably have become aware of it in the winter when there is a series of guest speakers that come, that are organized and presented by the Sorensen group. Now, we've got here a designated fund index and designated money market. These are other assets. They're unrestricted. So that means they don't have a specific use to which they are dedicated, like these items that I just called out. So to determine how they get used, there can be requests be made to Luff and or the board. And they will jointly work together in terms of deciding how to disperse that funds. Now, if the total amount of money exceeds 5%, then it comes to the congregation to vote. So in this case, 5% of 400,000, let's see, $20,000. So if we're going to do something at that level, you will hear about it. Okay, this is a typical report that I give monthly to the committee. And what you will see in it, this was the one for the end of October. So, and it compares what we had at the end of September with what we had at the end of October. And you can see here we had a dip. We went from 344,000 down to 336 for a loss for that period of 7,400 roughly. Okay, the money market funds, as opposed to mutual funds, are were a total of 52,795, at the beginning of the month, and at the end of the month, October 31st, we were at $53,032. And that was only $237 difference, but it was positive. Then we have the Cole music money, and it was 11,390, and it was 11,441 by the end of the month, an increase of $51. And I think that was just, investment, positive results. Then we had the total money market, 64,186, end of the month, 64,474, for an increase of 28.22. The total Vanguard 930 was 408,000, and then at the end of October it was 401,000. So overall, we saw a decrease in assets. You have the graph that goes after that, please. Okay. This shows the past 13 months, and it shows you what the total value has been over that time period. So you can see we've had a couple increases, a couple decreases, reaching a high point around July, and then we've had some decrease recently, in part for final payment for this heating pump. Okay. Now on the bottom of this, which apologize, you can't read the details, is a listing of each of the funds, the Dyer, the Sorensen, Cole Music, and then the undesignated funds. And so you can go across this line and see where we are at the end of October. Are there any questions about the fund? Alan?
Was there any consideration given to using LUF funds as an alternative to furloughing the staff?
I do not know that. Jason?
Based on the way LUF is structured, and we did not consider this money at all to be used to help furlough staff. We want to use what our normal income is based on pledges and as what you see in the current budget. This was something well before that was put for rules on what the LUF monies are to be used for, as was described earlier by Duncan. So we did not want to go beyond that. Okay. Oh, they're here for us.
I'm assuming that it's you examine the investments as to what, so we're not investing in things we don't believe in.
I presume you're meaning, are we investing in diamond mining in South Africa?
Yes, there were things like that.
I don't think we're doing that. We may have in the past had some funds which specifically avoided getting ourselves into that kind of situation. Now we're kind of stuck in the situation of how do we keep our funds up at the current market level versus how do we meet our value needs that are important to the congregation. So let's see, this would have been over 10 years ago, but Alan, you would know, there was a fund that was social. Okay, but we moved out of that because it was very low yield. So we can, and we do, and we're aware of that. And if someone in the congregation has a particular issue, or please bring it to the committee. We're more than willing to consider it. There's the MM, the mutual money market, fund, and then there's some one that's listed MFI that was up on the screen. It hasn't changed since you left, that I'm aware of. Another question?
Thank you. What is the, excuse me, what is the document that sets forth the restrictions of use of funds by the foundation? And is that, for instance, is it part of the bylaws, et cetera? Or is it strictly in the foundation documents themselves? And the obvious follow-on question is, how do we change that if that becomes necessary?
Okay.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Got it.
It's in the Lincoln Unitarian Foundation Resolution and Plan of Operation, and it was last amended June 15th, 2022, and it outlines, and it's signed both by Luff and the Board of Trustees, and it can be amended with signatures from both entities, and it's currently Luff has come up with a plain language version, but the board hasn't taken it up.
Can I go before? Hang on.
We do have, like Emily said, an agreement between the board and the Luff committee. We are currently working with Luff on their revision. They have moved it to more plain language. The Luff funds are more of our long-term savings. And as a church, we cannot continually dip into emergency funds to fund our budget. Within our agreement with Luff and within the way Luff has been set up in the past, their funds are for capital expenses, not for annual operating expenses.
I have a question about our relationship with Vanguard. Vanguard was sold this week, and I was just curious if the Luff committee is comfortable that that we'll be able to stay with our Vanguard fund and our Vanguard advisor will stay with us even in their move. And I don't even know if our advisor is moving to Mercer with everyone else.
Thank you for the information. We will certainly look into this. Other questions?
Who has a question?
Is there no endowment for this church? Does this church have no endowment funds?
Well, this goes into specific designations of how the funds are allocated, but essentially, would be looked at funds that are available for the future of the church.
Yeah, so an endowment has a particular legal definition, right? So there are ways in which Luff looks like an endowment, in that it's primarily for capital expenses. It does have a corpus, meaning the amount of money that's invested, that tends to go up until it's used for large projects. In that, it's not unlike an endowment. We have had some conversations about starting a separate endowment, but that's kind of a different conversation than this one. I do want to go back to an earlier question, which is did we consider drawing on Luff for the budget? Because this is actually a really important question. In putting together the budget this year, it was really important for us that we not put together a budget that draws on reserves. And that's important for two reasons. One, that the budget be sustainable over time. So $400,000 looks like a lot of money, right? But the reality is, there's only about $300,000 that's really available in any meaningful way. And if you use that to fill up a $40,000 deficit, you have less than a decade as a church. right? That's simple math. $300,000 over 40,000, you have 8 years. We as a church want to be here for 150 more years, and so we can't plan our budget around that. The other reason, it's going to step a little bit on Jason's thunder a little bit, is that we do need that money available in case we have a shortfall. So right now, it's December 10th, thank you. Right now, it's December 10th, and actually our pledge income for the year is quite a bit below what we expect to see in mid-December. So unlike previous years where we've ended the year with a surplus, it is likely this year that we will end this year with a deficit. That money will need to come from somewhere. That money will need to come from some reserve line unless everybody fulfills their pledges in the next 2.5 weeks, which please do. In years past, that's been a request of love, or that's been a draw on reserves. And so if we were in a situation right now where we had a budget that was drawing from LUF and was drawing from reserves, and we had this additional potential draw because we were in a deficit at the end of this year, we would be in trouble. And so for that reason, it was really important to put together a budget that doesn't plan on sort of a structural draw on our reserves.
We have a question over here.
Having served on the foundation decades ago and reading the original documents, from my understanding, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, is that it was established, as it says up there in line 3, which is no longer being shown online, but it was up there just most of the time. Use these funds for significant repair, improvement, or construction of church property. And that was the main primary focus of how and why that foundation was created. It never had its own, we found out when I was on the foundation board, the foundation never got its own nonprofit status. It was always underneath the church. And as we recently discovered in this past year or two, that our old system of how we were set up had to get updated with the IRS, which we've now done, I assume. And so we're now legit with current standards. So I guess... We're always legit. Well, it's true. We are always legit. It's just...
We have always been legit with the IRS.
Right.
There has never been a time where this church has been out of compliance with tax law.
Yeah,
Say it to the back of the room in the live stream on that
so
one.
your tax deductions were fine when you were doing that, able to do that. So, I don't disagree that it can also help serve for an emergency gap at the end of the year, but I would really cringe if we start tapping it, like Oscar was saying, to make up a budget deficit for operations and so forth. I mean, if we didn't have the money we had in there at the time, this would not all have happened to the building we have now. That fund is what paid for the architectural fund and fees, plus getting us kick-started for the construction. So we've got to keep that in mind, and I encourage everybody to try to donate to it, try to make sure if you have the sad event of passing away, you list the church as one of your memorials, like many others do for other churches. So keep that in mind. Encourage that to happen. But thank you.
Such wise words. Thank you very much. I think we probably should move on to... No, one more.
Are there any plans to have the foundation be an actual foundation with separate IRS standing?
Emily?
Currently, the way the agreement is set up with the BOT, we're a standing committee of the church. And there are no current plans. Basically, most foundations, I looked into it, have a whole lot more money than we do. And to have the foundation set up through the IRS. When the people on the Luff Committee discovered that they weren't really a foundation, the committee looked into setting it up as a foundation, and they decided that the fees that they would have to pay, they didn't want to pay them, that it was just better with the limited amount of money we had to have a standing committee.
We need more money.
I did
Here,
buy
here.
a lottery ticket. I didn't win. I'm sorry. So. Thank you.
Okay. Jason?
Well, okay. What's next?
All right, if
Am
we
I-
could,
am I next?
there are a few more slides about the anniversary fund and how that works. There's information on that on the website for Luff, on our church's website. And we can forward on to Jason. The anniversary funds? Yes, yes. And so Luff sends out letters on the anniversary of people joining the church, encouraging them to donate money to the anniversary fund, which is then tapped into for smaller projects. So, all right.
There's also a comment in the live chat from Linda Brown. We reevaluated our investments 2 years ago for social responsibility, to that question. We decided that we could live with our investments with good conscience. I believe that was while Linda was president of the Board of Trustees.
Okay.
And to get to the Luff thing in the website, you need to go to the search bar and type in Luff in order to get that. It isn't just going to be in the governance page or a drop down like that.
All right. All right. Jason.
I'm next. I'll trade you. Hello. So my name's Jason Slaughter. I'm the current treasurer for the church. I have budgets. If you have not seen one or need one, I do have copies of our proposed budget for 2024. Please raise your hand if you would like to have a copy. Okay. Here, I'll give these to you and a couple of them over there and there. All right. Well, so I'm just going to give a report. This is my second time doing this, so I appreciate your grace in what I'm going to say. So today I would like to tell you where we stand in our finances here at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln. The one word I would tell our community is the word stable. We are coming out of a turbulent time of a pandemic and how it does affect how we run our church. I can report that we are still a church that is debt-free and we pay our bills. That's a big thing. And IRS compliant, if you didn't notice that just recently. This may seem like just a basic thing to do for a church, but we do stand out at being stable in other aspects of other Unitarian churches and churches abroad. There are Unitarian churches in our region that are not as in the same boat as we are in. There are churches that are in debt, and so we do have to be really grateful of what we do here at the church. Let's start with income. So far for year 2023, we are 93% of the way through the year, and we are 84.5% of the budget, meaning that we're not there yet fully balanced. Pledge has been steady throughout most of the year. That's been good. But in the past couple months, they've slowed down. The rest of our income has been expected throughout the year. Expenses. Well, again, we're 93% of the year, but we are 91% of the budget. That means we as a church and committees and who spend the money at the church have not been overspending. They have been fiscally responsible. This takes a lot of work and a lot of awareness to make sure that we live inside our means. Since I started this role since the summer, we've had 2 finance team meetings, and we've had great conversations on the future as well as what we're doing now to keep the church running smoothly. I am very proud to have my vice treasurer, Karen Heifer, assisting me and I look forward to working with her for the next year and a half of our terms. Next year, we're going to have a financial review. If you look at the budget, if you've seen it, I have notated in red. That is a one-time thing for next year's budget. It's about going to be right around $7,000, which honestly is long overdue. And I believe with the staff help, we'll have a great and good experience with this project. I look forward to sharing the result of the review once it is all completed. I want to thank Judy Kelly's leadership for the annual giving campaign. She has been a great partner to work with engaging our church so we can see where we are at and then planning for our future. I would like for Judy Kelly to stand up, please. You've been so amazing and support for me. Thank you so much. Without the work she has done, our church outlook could be a lot different than what it is today. I want to end this report to let you know that I am available to answer questions or to field comments on how we handle the money in this church. We would need to be transparent about this process, and I'm a transparent person. My information's in Realm. I have phone number. You have my email address. You can, if you want to knock on my door at my apartment, I'm happy to be there. I work from home, so I'm usually there all the time. So, but please, I'm happy to. I am your servant here as the treasurer. The finances of the church are not hidden from any of you. I make a report every month. It's available every month, so just make sure you're aware of that. I want to take pride that like I said, we're transparent about our money in this community. I will look forward to talking with any one of you to help make things clear on how we handle the money in this church. The way we handle our finances says a lot about who we are and what we do here at this church. We talked about our vision and statements and what we do here. The action that we talked about of showing up is how we invest our community and help change people's lives. I am so proud to be your treasurer, and I cannot wait to see what this future holds for us. Thank you so much. Question?
I have a question. It's sort of a point of order. Is it possible to offer amendments to the budget?
That's a great question. I don't know. Maybe that's kind of a board of trustees kind of a thing.
On our ballot, we are voting on the budget as it currently stands. Should income change, then the Board of Trustees will meet to decide how to use that additional income.
Okay. I would think the assembled congregation's inability to offer amendments is inconsistent with describing ourselves as democratically run.
So, I don't know how to speak to that, to be totally honest with you. That's my first. It's the first time maybe treasuring for anything right now, so I'm learning as I go. I think that's a great question. I think that's something that we could talk about one-on-one, and then ultimately I can find the answer for you and see if there's a pathway that we can make that happen. But I honestly, what I've been told is what Kim said here. We formed the budget. We have a whole process to do that over the past couple months through Board of Trustees meetings. Board of Trustees meetings is open to everyone. And this says the budget has been available for everyone to look at for a while now. And we can always make amendments before the voting that happens, I guess. That's kind of how I've always felt has been presented to me and how this process works. But, I think if you don't like what we're at right now, maybe the vote to not approve the budget will make sense. We do have a process that will happen if this budget does not pass. But I think we've worked really hard for where we're at for the 2024 budget as is. This is our starting point as I look at it. We as we talked about already today, we need a place to continue growing and be in a realistic place for our church when it comes to the money that comes in from pledges and our operating budgets.
And that is also what our town halls are for. Our town halls, we present the budget and we have people ask questions and offer their suggestions. I see Evelyn has.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been at both town halls, and I'm going to say what I said then. What they are trying to do is make our budget match the money we have coming in. If you imagine your own household, you would not set a budget for $50,000 if you knew the only money you had coming in was $30,000 or $40,000. You just wouldn't do it. Now, we have in the past relied on second asks. We've relied on money from hither and yon. It's time to stop doing that. If what our membership pledges is, what is it, 400,000?
466,000 and change.
That's what our budget is. And we have to learn to live with inside that. Now, very, very painful decisions have been made in order to do this. Very, very painful decisions. I can only imagine the boxes of Kleenex and the glasses of wine that have been gone through in making this decision, not to mention nights unslept. But please consider voting yes on the budget so that we can move forward in a fiscally responsible way. Thank you.
I do want to talk to your point about democracy, Alan, because I think that's it's a really important question to ask. Because we do come out of a tradition that is direct democracies at congregational meetings. So there's a technical reason that we're not doing amendments at congregational meetings and haven't for 3 years, which is that it's almost impossible to figure out how to do amendments on the fly when you have a hybrid meeting. And we've chosen to prioritize including people on the live stream as part of this meeting. So there's that technical answer for why it is the way it is. But the broader answer is that democracy doesn't just happen at this meeting and this vote. It also happens when you elect members of the Board of Trustees, when you gather in your clusters and put together who the cluster liaison and the program council is going to be, when you call a minister, when you participate in the stewardship committee. Because the process that leads to this vote in December started for me this year in July. Our first meetings about this were in July. And they involve leadership that the congregation has elected. And then by August, we're bringing in budget requests from the program council, who comes out of all the committees that you're all a part of. In September, we're launching a stewardship campaign that is broadly participatory and communicating like this is the income side of the budget. In October, the board had a forum on the budget where we started talking about a first draft. In November, we were putting together how that draft was going to interact with the real income. And then we've had 2 town halls. So yes, in that moment where we get all the way to the congregational meeting and say we're not going to take amendments from the floor at the congregational meeting, that feels like a tense thing to say, but also this is the culmination of 4 or 5 months of a democratic process that you can't separate this vote from everything that led up to it. And that, I hope, has been participatory. And I will just continue to invite more participation into that process in every single year.
Thank you, Oscar.
Yeah, I can understand your sharing of that aspect of setting the budget. I do have a line item question. The very last line in the budget is a new item that showed up last year, and I understand it's a new city-wide effort to involve many congregations. Justice in Action had $4,000 for it last year, and it went up to $4,500. And could you share, one, how that's established the amount, and two, with risk of being blasphemous in a Unitarian church, are we getting bang for our buck by being involved in that? That money as a whole could have obviously potentially paid for the AV position, just in a quick, glance. But granted, other salaries were cut too. But mainly, how much are we gaining for $4,500, other than being seen with the community in stepping up? I understand our values fit what's being discussed with Justin in Action, but
I think this goes back to the conversation that we had this morning about mission and vision. Justice in Action, we spent 3 years getting off the ground. It's a coalition of about 23 now congregations across Lincoln working on increasing access to mental health care in this city and increasing access to pretrial diversion. We've also added a third issue, which is affordable housing. When I came 7 years ago, you told me, this congregation told me, that the thing you wanted to do is be a partner, and you wanted the Lincoln Unitarian Church to be known in the community as a congregation that was involved in the community. And when I came 7 years ago, I said, you called me in part because I was a trained community organizer through Gamaliel. In setting up Justice in Action, that coalition of 24 churches appointed representatives. I was one of them who set the financial model for that. We have 2 professional organizers, people in Lincoln who wake up and say, first thing in the morning, how do we do this thing? How do we increase access to mental health care? How do we increase access to pretrial diversion? That's what it pays for, is those 2 salaries. The money is set by a decision that we made as a group of 24 congregations to say that it will be 1% of the budget of each congregation that participates. So it's $4,500 for us. It's somewhat more than that for First Plymouth, and it's somewhat less than that for Quinn Chapel. I guess here's what I want to say, because I get this question a lot, and it just, I guess, time to be honest. Like, this is the thing that I came to Lincoln saying that I wanted to do. This is the thing that I have been involved in launching since we launched it. I am incredibly proud that when they launched Justice in Action, they said, oh, the Unitarians are going to be flaky. We don't necessarily want them to be in leadership. 2 years later, we're the church that shows up for all of the Justice in Action things. We are the rock of that organization. And so I have put, so our credibility as an institution, as the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, is on the line. Like, if we pull that funding, then that really says something about who we are. But also, I've put a lot of my own personal and professional credibility into that organization. Like, and that's the thing I just need to be honest about today, is like, I was just elected as the president of that organization. I'm 2 months into a 2-year term. If the directive of this congregation is that you don't want to be involved in Justice in Action, boy, I guess I'll hear that, but that one would sting, because that is a thing that we've been building for 7 years. And $4,500 is not the thing that's breaking our budget. That's saying we're in it with all of these other churches, and we are in the model that we've been building, and we have skin in the game with that model. Beyond that, I suppose it's up to the congregation.
I mean, that's a great question. I want to step back a little bit. As treasurer, when we went through the budget and made our cuts, I'm going to be honest with you, it was not a fun process. It was really, really hard. I've never been a part of anything like that before. And I was probably the most brutal person in the room. They'll probably attest to that, because I still wanted to cut more. That's the honest truth. They told me, the people that have been here longer than I have, we need to keep some semblance of the church intact. and I was cutting things. I was cutting things that I didn't know that was really a semblance of the church, because I needed to get my job as the treasurer. I need to get to a number. I need to get to a number that is realistic. And through the work and hard work of the executive committee and the board of trustees, we have a realistic number, I think. And so that is the support I get being a treasurer, and working with the congregation to get to this point that we are here today. It, as we've all talked about, it has not been easy. It's not been easy to hear, but it is reality. It is the truth. And I appreciate everyone's really support of this and asking these hard questions. And I just appreciate everyone that's been part of this process. We have a question over here.
Oh, thank you. We're in a tough spot. I think we're in a tough spot together, collectively, and our parts. Clearly, we could have done better in contributing money and finding money and so forth. As individual members of the congregation, I was very impressed that our minister and staff said, yeah, we relied on this and we made some mistakes, and that contributed to us being in this place. I can imagine that not happening, but it did here. So not only do we have to look to the future in the way that we have in the past, but I think it is also incumbent upon us collectively, staff and individual members of our fellowship, to find maybe a little different way forward. I don't know what that is. That's the treasurer's job, right, Jason?
That's my job.
Just kidding.
No.
So what I'm trying to say is that, I think we may need to have some new and unusual ways to approach this, again, in a very disciplined fashion, but it matters a lot to me as a member, as someone who grew up as a preacher's kid, and who love our staff, to say that people are more important than stained glass windows. Maybe not more important than the roof every time. But I think we cannot say that our humans are not a vital part of the future of what the Unitarian Church of Lincoln has been and is and can only be, with all of us collectively, including those that have the ability to be staff and lend us their time. Rent us their time, if you will. So I'm just trying to shake things up a little bit. And I wish I was more precise, but the only thing immediately that offers itself, is looking back, at the foundation, because that's the money I see. And I think this is a kind of a crisis, and we need to treat it as a crisis. And my definition of crisis is that it's something that happens, and after that, it's different. You can't unscramble the egg.
So, at any rate, thank you.
I do want to address one thing, because it's one of the challenges of hybrid meetings is that we have some comments that are in the room and some comments that are online. So while I was talking about justice and action, a comment came through online that I'm just going to read, that we value our staff more than someone's pride. I assume that was talking about me. So here's the thing. Yes, I said that justice and action would put my professional credibility online. That's true. It is also the case that partnership is the thing that this congregation called me here to do. So yes, I have a ton of pride invested in this congregation. Not sad about that. Not going to apologize for that. But I also don't think that this is a budget that is prioritizing my pride over the staff. And so I think I need to name that, because that comment was made. I'd be responding to it if it was made in person, so I'm responding to it in the live chat. And I would also just observe that I'm one of the staff getting cut, right? So there we go. There's a question back here.
Well, in terms of the original organizing of justice and action, and the idea that the Unitarian Church was not one to be relied upon, I think for us as a church to pull out of justice and action would be confirmation that we are flaky and we are not to be relied upon. So I would say it is something that we all told Oscar we wanted to do. So we're doing it, and we've actually had a victory already. So I think it's important to continue with that work. I don't think we're in a crisis. Pandemic was a crisis. This is not a crisis.
Can I say just one thing? And that people are important. And the important thing is, which is cool about this time, is that some of you filled out a volunteer form. And many of you, I think, have already been contacted by the person that is kind of spearheading the group that you might have signed up for. That's where we can put our help. And that is where part of what maybe the staff, I'm already finding, I'm a dazzler, I will tell you that. And I'm already being given some things that I can do that the staff is now maybe won't have time to do. But know that is why it's so important for everybody to have filled out that, or to at least, if somebody has contacted you and say, hey, you said you were interested in culinary thing or the kitchen. Hey, this is how you can help. Please say yes. Or please say, how can I, or when can I do it? That's what we need to do now also. And that's what part of this budget is all about, that's part of it. That's a big part of it for me, because that's, to me, is as important as signing our check or having it, is to be here and to do things and to truly show up, not just for community things, but show up in the building to keep this place going.
Thank you for saying all of that. Before the pandemic, we decided as a congregation we were going to move to 2 services. And I was on deck because Oscar was very sick.
Totally not COVID in January of 2020.
And that was something we expected would happen and continue for as long as we could remember. And not that long ago, we thought we were going to be building a new sanctuary. That was just the next obvious thing that was going to happen. A lot of things have had to contract in response to what's going on. And it's not just us. And when I look at what we have, and I
I don't know if it was at the town hall, if it was a service last Sunday, when Oscar was talking about the irony of this and what we have going. Justice in Action is just one of those things, and I am, yes, involved and committed, and so many people in this place are. We exist more for what's outside of this building, in my view. That's what this faith has always been about to me. It hasn't been about serving me as an individual, though I'm very glad it has done that. It's like the most important things we do. The absolutely most important things we do. So this contraction, I hope, and I sort of believe, is gonna be short-lived. And the reason I think that is because the real responsibility beyond pledging in this community is to welcome more people into this community. And it's something, you know, I've been here over 30 years now. It's like the least comfortable thing for people in this church to do. To say, to even acknowledge in the community that you're Unitarian. I'm getting better at it. And to welcome people in this place. And to be innovative and creative and think about ways perhaps that we can produce other income streams for this place. We're not done. And the feeling I have, and I've had it at other town hall meetings, and it's feeling like that in this room this morning, is like this is the death knell. It's not. It's not the death knell. It's a fiscally responsible, short-term, as I consider it, contraction. And we are going to fill the balloon up again. We just can't do it this year. That's all this is to me. That's the way I'm looking at it. And believe me, I am preparing to do whatever this circumstance calls me to do to make sure we're not facing this situation next year. And I hope everyone else is feeling that excitement and that commitment more than a feeling of wanting to upend what has been a months-long process for so many people who love and care for the staff in this place. There's no question. That's not on the ballot, whether we care about our staff, for me. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you. So that concludes my treasurer's report. I really appreciate everyone commenting and having a discussion. This is what we do. So thank you so much. Yeah, I got it.
All right, thank you, Jason, for your report and the work you do to support our church. I just want to acknowledge the fact that your president has an intense fear of public speaking. And this church has constantly pushed me into leadership roles and forced me to grow. I've always been comfortable talking to my elementary students. Give me 25 kids in a room, I am fine. 25 or more adults is very stressful. So I apologize if my eyes are glued to my script. It's because I am not a public speaker, but I am learning. I am growing. So thank you all for forcing me to grow as a human. One of the major responsibilities of the board, as you have all heard, is to create a budget and ensure that church expenditures stay within the budget or are adjusted in light of actual income. This is in our bylaws. This is one of our important jobs. And we have to be realistic about our finances and make sound business decisions for the financial health and the longevity of our church. As we discussed in the town halls, our church has changed greatly in the past few years. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted our church in many ways, as it has to many other churches across the country. Our membership and average Sunday attendance has decreased. And we are grateful for the work that our staff, minister, and leaders did as our church constantly pivoted and adapted to the changes during the pandemic. During that time, we did use emergency funding to maintain our budget as it was and maintain our staffing. But as we emerge from the pandemic, we have to recognize that we're in a different world and our church has changed. And change is hard. All change, even positive change, involves some loss. Loss of what was, loss of what might have been, loss of the comfort of what was known. And that loss brings grief. And I understand the feelings of shock, loss, and grief that many of you probably felt when you first saw the budget for 2024. We went through that as an executive committee, as a board, but we had to acknowledge that this place where we are now is not emergency as it was during the pandemic. This place that we are now is our starting anew and stepping forward. And as Christine said, we're hoping that this is short term. We do highly, highly value our staff. But we had to, as a board, as an executive team, consider what amount of staff can we afford as the size of congregation that we currently are. So that was what the process we went through. However, I want to honor and hold space for that sense of loss and grief. It's been hard for all of us. But on the other side of grief can be hope, renewed strength, and new direction. Change is hard, but it is necessary for growth. And that is one of the reasons that we're exploring our mission and vision. By redefining who we are and where we want to be as a church, we're taking those steps from the grief that we're feeling right now towards hope. And our church community has shown time and again over the past 6 months and before, since our spring congregational meeting, that we show up to do that hard work. We have accomplished much since May, when I took my term as board president in June. In the summer, our board elected new Board of Trustees officers for the 2023-2024 congregational year. We approved Jason Slaughter as our treasurer and Karen Hafer as our vice treasurer. We updated the finance handbook and the personnel handbook. Our church sent delegates to the UUA General Assembly, both in person in Pittsburgh and virtually. We celebrated the return of our minister and his family and celebrated our congregation with a picnic potluck in July at Antelope Park. Our bylaws review task force, led by Judy Hart and working with many others, continued to meet doing the challenging work of revising our church bylaws. And a team was established to explore our mission and vision. We also voted to approve a much overdue financial review. The stewardship ministry team started meeting to plan for the annual giving campaign and also to research other year-round stewardship opportunities. And the board began budget discussions in the summer. Our board developed 4 priorities for the church year: aligning staff and ministerial salaries with UUA suggested midpoint guidelines, implementing a funding plan for building and grounds sustainability, increasing involvement and engagement across all parts of the congregation and strengthening volunteer leadership, and expanding collaborative efforts on human rights advocacy, including but not limited to justice in action, legislative advocacy, and social movements that align with our denominational values. Many of our church members are involved in these activities and in Justice in Action, and Oscar was recently elected as co-president of Justice in Action. During the fall, our annual giving campaign had its kickoff with a potluck on September 10th. Board members encouraged congregant conversations about special memories at church and why the church was important to you. Our church hosted the Odo Missouri brunch on September 22nd. The Bylaws Review Task Force continued to meet and do the revision work, as well as planning for presenting the revised bylaws to the congregation. The Mission and Vision team continued to plan and discuss. The October 22nd service was hosted by board members, and our 501c3 status went into effect. We met with church leaders of the Omaha UU churches and hope to continue that partnership. The executive committee, comprised of the board president, vice president, treasurer, vice treasurer, program council chair, and minister, met multiple times to work on the budget. The Second Chance auction was a huge success, thanks to Karen Hafer and Barbara Pearson and all the amazing people who donated and bid on items.
So,
Karen?
Barbara, stand up because you belong this too. This is the only time you'll get a newsletter, but we made $6,700. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
We also continued to work on the budget. Then the board planned and held 2 town hall meetings and prepared for this meeting today. So much happens in our church community, both within and beyond these walls, and it's impossible to capture it all in a president's report. And if I tried, we'd be here all day, which none of us want. So as part of our stewardship campaign, we also asked about time and talent, as Karen referred to. So many of you committed to being engaged in our church. All of this shows that we are a church committed to love, to community, to growth. And we, as a board, are also committed to love, community, and growth. We love and support our church community through the difficult financial decisions we make and the thoughtful policy work we do. In the upcoming months, we'll continue to examine who we are as a church community and where we want to be through our mission and vision work. And this work is a foundation for everything else we do. It's interwoven with our commitments to expanding stewardship, increasing engagement, growing our congregation, and ensuring the long-term well-being of our building and church community. The last sentence of our covenant states, we cultivate growth and celebrate the changes growth brings. Growth involves change, which can be painful. As we have discussed, this year is going to be painful for us. But with change, there's also hope, especially if we support one another and work together to grow and create a stronger church community. Thank you. Oscar will now share his minister's report.
All right, so traditionally, the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, the minister of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln delivers 2 reports every year to the congregation. The annual report that comes at the May congregational meeting and a verbal report that comes at this winter congregational meeting. Because I was on sabbatical last year, this is my first report to the congregation as a whole in 12 months. It is also 1 o'clock, so it will be a relatively short report. But I do want to talk about three things in my report to the congregation as a whole. Both what I've been up to over the last year, a little bit about where we are right now in this moment, and then some reflections on where we've been over the last 7 years. So when I last did this report 12 months ago, the December 2022 congregational meeting, I was finishing up my Doctor of Ministry degree, including writing a thesis based on an oral history project that we did here in the fall of 2022. So in May, I graduated from Wesley Theological Seminary. My thesis, Everything Brought to Speech, Oral History as Healing After the Pandemic, is done. It is available to anybody in this congregation who wants to read it. Most of you were participants in the study. And so if you want to see the final, it occurred to me actually as I was writing this report that one thing we never did is actually hand that thesis fully written back to the congregation. So it is now done. I would love if anybody wants to see this congregation reflected in a long form piece of academic writing. That's out there. Over the spring, I spent 5 months on sabbatical in the United Kingdom, living at the Unitarian congregation in Bessels Green, which is just south of London. It was a fantastic opportunity for lots of reasons. Fun congregation to work with. It was nice to just preach twice a month and not have administrative load. It was also an interesting opportunity to see a Unitarian church in a post-religion society. And you've heard me say this in a couple different ways, but Seven Oaks, that congregation, is one of the largest and most thriving Unitarian churches in southern England. They have 15 members. And when you look at where the UK is now and where the US is now, their demographic trends are about 30 years ahead of us. So the question for religion that is part of this big pivot that we're doing right now about sustainability is, if we are in a world where we're seeing religion go from the default for what everybody does on Sunday morning, it's just a question of what church they go to being a thing that people self-select into, that's a much smaller group of people. And so how do we manage that transition? In the UK, they were lucky. They had big endowments, so they largely did not adjust. And so they are at a point now where they're down to 15 people. For me, the question after that sabbatical is, what are the adjustments we make now so that 30 years from now, this isn't the most vibrant Unitarian church in the Midwest? Look at the 20 people we have. It's also a case that this congregation just sent me to get a doctorate on that subject. Like, the actual thing that's on my diploma is a doctorate of ministry in church leadership excellence, which was about managing churches in times of transition and cultural change. So thank you for doing that. It's not entirely unconnected from day-to-day work. So coming home, we found the church doing some great things. Justice in Action, we've talked about a lot. Also facing some real headwinds. Our attendance is down from where it was in 2019. It's down from where it was 12 months ago. Finances are we've talked about finances a lot. I don't need to spend time on that in this report. So what does that all mean for where we are right now? All this conversation that we've been having is part of the Unitarian Church of Lincoln getting caught up in trends that are wildly larger than us as a congregation. The UUA just released numbers a little while ago. Religious education attendance in the UUA is down 40% in the last 6 years. Right? So when we look at our RE attendance here and see it down 40%, we need to know that that's not us. That's this big thing that's happening culturally. So the question is not necessarily how do we tinker with things and do what we've been doing better. The question is, how do we get ahead of that wave and figure out how we will do things differently to respond to a world that has fundamentally different needs. That's required some hard steps. That's this budget conversation. We could stretch it out another couple of years. We could take money from the endowment. We could figure out emergency funding strategies. We could do that. But what this allows us to do is stabilize now so that we can be ready to be ahead of that cultural change, so that we're doing it on purpose rather than reacting to it. All right, so I want to close just by, I said this at the last town hall, but it bears repeating. I also said it this morning, actually, that you always underestimate what you can do in a decade. This remains an extraordinary church. This is the irony of having this budget conversation now, is we're getting ahead of that cultural shift, and it's painful, but it's also happening at a moment where this church is vibrant and healthy and involved and launching stuff. I just want to go through this list. We 7 years ago said we wanted to be a beacon of liberal religion in the city, and we want to be people that show up. We've talked about Justice in Action, but we haven't talked about Beloved Conversations, which the UUA launched, and then we sent more people to than the UUA knew how to handle. And then we kept those people involved until Meadville Lombard Seminary ran out of curriculum for us. Very literally, they said we're going to have 3 years of curricula, and we shot through the first 2 with dozens of participants. Most churches send like 6 people to Beloved Conversations. We sent 40, and then over 20. And then they said we didn't expect anybody to go through it that fast. We don't actually have the 3rd year written. We've gotten involved in the indigenous community here. We host the Oto, Missouri delegation that looks like they're coming up once a year now. I was gone this spring, but it was amazing to watch the fight for healthcare access for trans teens play out here in Lincoln with members of this church involved. That made international news in London, where Stacy and I were. We were seeing pictures of the Nebraska Capitol, and I swear to God, there were Unitarians in the background of those pictures. And internally, in 7 years, we figured out how to do worship in different ways. We have a live stream. We launched a live stream in January of 2020 before the pandemic. It was not this. We figured that out fast and well. We weathered a pandemic. We wrote a covenant. We've welcomed people in. We've married people. We've buried people. I've done over 50 funerals now since I've been here in Lincoln. We host groups in these spaces. This building isn't just the Unitarian Church of Lincoln anymore. It's also Blue Stem Montessori. It's also the home of the Lincoln Music Teachers Association. It's also the institutional home of the Lincoln Chamber Players. So when I look back and say, oh, we wanted this place to be a community center and a beacon of liberal religion in Lincoln, how far we've come in 7 years is extraordinary. All the more so for having plopped a pandemic right in the middle of it that disrupted everything else. And so if we're trying to get ahead of this, this wave, this big cultural shift that's happening, this is the place that's going to do it. Like, this is the church that's going to be able to do that because we have done it. You have done it year after year after year in extraordinary ways that have often caught me off guard. It's such a joy to be a part of that. It's such a joy to say, well, I don't need to figure out the mission and vision. We've got incredibly wise and thoughtful people. I don't need to plan a sermon for the morning before the congregational meeting. I'm just going to put smart, compassionate, and wise people who can speak about this congregation in front of the congregation, and it's going to be fine, because this is a place that can hold that. So the other thing I'll say sort of at the end is I am now the longest tenured Unitarian minister in Nebraska, the longest tenured Unitarian minister in Iowa, and there is one minister in Kansas who has been here 1 year longer than me. And I serve the best congregation in any of those states. And I say that all the time, actually, at collegial gatherings. I always tell people, come visit Lincoln. There's an extraordinary group of people who show up every single time we ask them to. And we do a lot, and they keep showing up more. So thanks. Thanks for that opportunity. And it's going to be an interesting year. I don't know what my annual report's going to look like in May right now. But we've got smart, committed people staying ahead of big cultural changes, and we'll figure it out together. It's 1:10. Any last questions before we start to wrap up the congregational meeting? All righty. How did the softball team do? You know, one of the things that they taught in my Doctorate of Ministry program is to try lots of things, call everything an experiment, and then not take it personally when the experiment has unexpected or negative results. In my first year, I was very excited here to launch a Unitarian Church of Lincoln softball team to participate in the league with other churches. I think we may have won one game. We did try, and we did show up. And it was not a successful experiment, so we did stop that in 2018. We didn't have God behind us, but the other thing that they say in that same demon program is that sometimes you run an experiment too early. And so you should be ready to try it again when its time has come. So I will just observe that the Orioles won their division this year. And if the Orioles could win their division this year, then the Unitarian Church of Lincoln could have a winning softball team. Thus ends my report. Somebody other than me is extinguishing the chalice.
Our closing words today are by Rosemary Watola Tromer. Directions. It is not the path that has disappeared. It is only that, stunned with grief and kicked by fear, we sometimes lose our will to put one foot in front of another. But we're not lost. Already in the dark, we have found each other. What astonishes is that there are so many of us, and already we are building bridges made of light. The world shakes, we stumble, and we help each other rise. And now it is time for us again to put one foot in front of the other. Not to escape what frightens us, but to walk unflinchingly toward the messy center of things. The path we choose now is not one we've walked or even seen before. The path is one that appears beneath our feet with each step, and we persist. Travelers in the frozen dark who begin to see the light as it shapes the horizon and know, though it's cold, that the change we dream of has already begun to arrive.
Thank you all. Go in peace, and please remember to vote before Tuesday.
Yes, the link is in your email and the form is live, so you can vote now before you leave the room on your phone if you want.